and now we're going to go ahead forward with the formal
Thank you,
session.
sir. I appreciate
Did I
it.
do that good, Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
sir.
Thank you. I'm learning this job. It's only been 3 years. My goodness. All righty. Honorable members of City Council, in accordance with the Virginia Beach City Code 2-21 and the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, I call for a special formal session of the Virginia Beach Council. Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 at 6 p.m., City Council Chamber, Building 3, formerly Building 1, second floor, 2304 Courthouse Drive. The purpose of this special formal session is to allow City Council to consider following is listed in the published agenda. 1. Amend City Code 18-5.2 deferred from December 14, 2021. 2. Transfer funds to authorize sponsorship and agreements with Team Blam and Virginia Beach African American Cultural Center, Inc. Raid Juneteenth events. Number 3, the fiscal year 22-23 resource management plan. Now, there are 2 separate initiatives that we will be bringing forward. A, the reconciled proposal, operating budget, capital improvement plan, budget, and related ordinances, or B, Councilmember Moss's proposal of fiscal year 2022-23, operating budget, capital improvement budget, and related ordinances. So, citizens may comment on either in person or virtually. If you would like to speak in person, call the clerk's office at 757-385-4303 to sign up. If you wish to make comments virtually on an item, please follow the 2-step process below. Okay, registered for WebEx at the https://vbgov WebEx VBGov onstage, or register with the city clerk's office by calling 757-385-4303 or via email at abarnes@vbgov.com prior to 5 o'clock on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. This special formal session will be streamed live on cable TV, vbgov.com, and Facebook Live, and be recorded for broadcast on cable TV. Citizens are encouraged to submit their comments to the City Council prior to the meeting via email at citycouncil@vbgov.com. Sincerely, Bobby Dyer, Mayor. Okay, we are going to be moving forward at this point.
Mayor, can you also?
Make the announcement on Mr. Bellucci.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bellucci asked that to inform the council and the audience and the public that he is out of the state supporting close family members and will be participating remotely. Okay. So I guess at this point, we're going to be, just go ahead and move forward. Yes, Mr. Moss.
I'm required, as my colleague is here, in addition to the letter that we have on file, to make an oral declaration that my wife is a school teacher with the Virginia Beach school system, and the fact that she is an employee of the Virginia Beach school system, and that we are considering the school board budget as part of an overall resource management plan, in no way influences the decisions that I make today and how I vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Rocky.
I'm an employee of the Sheriff's Office, and I have an opinion from the Commonwealth's Attorney and a letter on file with the Clerk's Office.
And Mayor, we need to do a roll call since Councilmember Bellucci is participating virtually. I mean, obviously, all of you are here, but I need Councilmember, you don't need to do, I see all of you, but we need to just acknowledge Councilmember Bellucci is present. Councilmember Bellucci, if you could signify your attendance by aye. We have unmuted you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. This is Michael Berlucci. I want to thank my council colleagues and all the members of the public for your understanding and patience. I am out of state, supporting some close family members who are experiencing some hardships, and I appreciate your flexibility. Obviously, this is an important evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate remotely. I am present. Thank you.
Is
All present.
the base unsigned up script for speakers?
Yes.
Yes.
You don't have to talk about planning committee.
Okay.
Planning.
I want to remind everyone that the city council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of group to speak for up to 10 minutes applies only to planning items. All other speakers, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have up to 3 minutes to speak on a single item. Speakers are reminded that comments during the special formal session of the meeting must be limited to the subject of the item that is being discussed, being considered by the council at the time you are called. For the items placed on the consent agenda, a speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address any single item. If a speaker wishes to address multiple consistent agenda items, the speaker will have a cumulative total of 6 minutes to address those items. Again, the speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter of the items they have signed up to address. Finally, I call upon all speakers and all persons in the chamber to be civil in their discussion and decorum. Whatever views you hold and wish to express, the City Council wants to hear from you, and to ensure that all viewpoints and all persons are respected. The best way to do this for all of us to strive for civility. Now, as we go forward, we have several ordinances that we have to vote on prior to the resource management plan. And with this resource management plan, we have the reconcile proposal and Mr. Moss's proposal. As we have open discussion like that, we're going to ask conversation address. I will reach each one of the items that are contained in the proposals, and each person will have 3 minutes to talk about that particular budget. You'll have the opportunity for both plans, okay? All right, first under ordinances, do we have any speakers on number 1?
No, sir.
Okay, okay, Rosemary?
The mayor and I addressed this issue in our letter of reconciliation, and I think it's $2.4 million, and there is no funding for that in our upcoming budget. So I move that we defer this indefinitely.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, conversation, Guy?
I'd like to move to amend the motion to defer it to a date certain, and I'd like to suggest the date certain be September of this year, September 20th, I believe, is a Tuesday. This is at the request of the commissioner. He'd like to essentially try to tie into the timing of getting ready for the next year's budget and make a presentation at that time.
I would support that for 2 reasons. One, we should have a much better handle on what the ending fund balance is, and we might be able to do something that we think we can't do today. I won't get into my budget proposal at this time. And also, I think it feeds right into us providing guidance up front rather than trying to provide guidance in February. And I think date certain is most appropriate, and I would support the substitute motion or the amendment if it's so favorable.
Mark, substitute motion to make the substitute the primary.
Right, did somebody
I would like substitute, but I would like to think the vice mayor, this sounds like a friendly amendment rather than definite, just to say September 20th. It doesn't say we're going to do it on September 20th. It just says we're going to revisit on a date certain. I hope that would be a friendly amendment.
Well, I would prefer to keep it as it is.
Okay, then I will second and make it a substitute.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? The vote is to go ahead and, defer this into September 20th.
That's it's the substitute to then to make it the main motion.
Yeah.
And then, so Councilmember Berlucci, if I could have your verbal vote, please.
Vote no on the substitute.
Substitute. So go ahead and close that, Terry. With Councilmember Berlucci voting no, that would be 6-5, so that substitute motion has failed.
Okay, so now we go to the main, recommended motion, which is the ordinance to amend City Code, Section 18-5.2, rate business license fees and taxes to provide revenue offsets. Okay, any speakers on that?
No.
Okay, any comments before the vote? Okay, vote is open.
This is to defer indefinitely, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Tower? Don't close it. Councilmember Berlucci, may I have your verbal vote?
I vote yes.
So by a vote of 8-3, this ordinance has been deferred indefinitely.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to two items that is similar in nature but worded a little differently, so we're going to bifurcate it out in terms of clarity. And they are ordinances to transfer from City Council Reserve Emergent Needs to fiscal year 2021 Convention and Visitors Bureau operating budget. The first item is $15,000 and authorize city manager to execute a sponsorship agreement with Team Lamb LLC, raise support Juneteenth at the beach, deferred from May 3rd. Any speakers?
No, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wilson?
I applaud Ms. Henley for bringing up that we for these specialized grants, that we probably need to have a process moving forward. And I am going to vote for this today, but I think that this council we're not using our arts and humanities and our COG groups like we should have and we've done in the past. And I'm not sure how thoroughly we're vetting all of these different organizations. So I would like to, moving forward, is to ask the Process Improvement Committee to please look at these grants and this sort of thing and to see if there's a better way that we can be doing this, because I know that Arts and Humanities thoroughly vets everything that they ask for. And they have to provide lots of documentation. And also, after the money's been spent, they have to come back and say how it's been spent. And I'm just not sure that we're doing all of that. So, like I say, I don't want to stop it today, but I would like for the Process Improvement Committee to, moving forward, to do that. And I always thank Mrs. Henley for her comments on this.
Thank you. Barbara?
Well, I don't mean to be critical of either of these applicants, but we do have a process. And I can't support them because they're not following the process. The whole reason for having the citizens, the COG committee and the Arts and Humanities Commission are to vet these applications. And it's just not right to not require everybody to follow the process. To come directly to the council is circumventing the process. And when we require others to go through the very difficult process or the vetting process and then the follow-up process, it's simply not fair. And I think we really have to, I mean, the whole reason we have COG and the whole reason we have Arts and Humanities Commission is to vet the applications from these citizen groups, nonprofit groups. That's their whole purpose. And I look at the applicants who are already in line for this year, and they're some of these same people plus others. And I think we have a process, and if we allow groups to circumvent the process, we're just encouraging it. If we allow these to do it, we shouldn't require anybody to have to go through the process. So I'm sorry, but I cannot support either of these.
Okay, anyone else? You know, if I could just say that, I was a sponsor of this, and, I agree with Barbara and Rosemary. But once again, coming out of a COVID, and Juneteenth is a relatively new holiday that was just implemented last time, and we were still under virtual constraints at the time. I concur that the process going forward, but I think that in my opinion, that both of these ones are kind of a symbol of unity in the community, that I really think shows a diversity inclusion. And let's just say, we take a look at the national picture. We are in some very, very challenging and divided times. So the point is, though, I'm going to support both of these, but I'm also going to concur that we have to have that process going forward to do what we have to do. So,
That's
yes.
one thing, and I think it needs to be understood that this is a one-time approval. This is not an ongoing, just because we're doing it this time, doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen next year.
Good point.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes, John.
Well, I really think, I've always said, the ends don't justify the means. I agree with all the accolades about what could be achieved, but I think a standing principle in our culture has always been, across all cultures, is that the ends don't justify the means. And I think we had a process, and we are encouraging that this isn't the first person, that we've had other people come up here to end run the pay plan process, and we took something when the manager gave them an answer they didn't like. We've had a number of cases where we have set a bad precedent and continue to do it. So on principle of that, I'm also joining Mrs. Henley. I can't support this deviation from the process that we have.
Okay, at this point, vote's open for approval.
Councilmember Berlucci, may I have your verbal vote, please?
I vote yes, thank you.
Terry, if you can close that.
Okay.
By a vote of 8-3, you have approved the ordinance for Juneteenth at the beach with Team Lamb.
Okay, and then moving on to Part B is a ordinance to grant $69,450 and authorize the city manager to execute a sponsorship agreement with the Virginia African American Cultural Center, Inc., to support Unity and Community Art Walk along the boardwalk, and requested by Mayor Dyer, council members Belushi, Rouse, Tower, and Wooten.
There are no
Okay,
speakers.
any speakers?
No, sir.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay,
I'll-
Ms. Henley, and then Aaron.
Well, I would just have to say, this is $69,000 for 12 murals. And when I look at the applicants that are already before the Arts and Humanities Commission this year, this exceeds what many of them are even asking for, much less what they have been getting in other years. And I see some of these very same people have applications already into the Arts and Humanities Commission. So the process is certainly known, and I just can't pull these ahead of those who are going through the procedure that they should go through and are getting denied or not getting what they asked for. And I just don't think it's the way we do things. And everybody's going through the pandemic, so it's not just for these couple of people, it's everybody. And I just think we have to be fair to everybody. When we're talking about equality, equality means everybody's treated the same.
Thank you. Rosemary?
I just want to point out that this is under ordinances 2B, so we need to make sure we identify, we don't have to read each one, but we need to identify the letter. Again, this is a one-time only this year, because I know the AACC also has money in its funds to be able to do things in the future. Right now, they have not submitted their spending plan to the state, so I would hope that moving forward that they would utilize the money that they have in their coffers for this.
Okay, well stated. Aaron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I heard I heard process and I heard equality. We're talking about Juneteenth here. We just recognized Juneteenth as a city holiday last year. As a state, year before. And as Councilmember Moss just stated earlier, I find it very, very peculiar and odd that we don't seem to follow process or any other thing, especially when it comes to funding items that comes before us, until it's a minority or that type of event. Whenever there is, it seems, and this is the perception, and I know that this may not be intentional, but this is how it appears. Whenever a minority or a group comes before this body and asks for support, it's the process. They haven't followed the process. Well, they tried the process, and they were treated unfairly. They were actually dismissed. And then we said, okay, well, bring it back again before us. And this, I think the last time they brought it was as soon as we could hear it. But again, you talk about equality. Equality is being open to all ideas. Doesn't mean we have to support them. Doesn't mean we have to stamp it with approval. But every item or every group that comes before us should be given a fair opportunity to state their case. And so, again, I keep hearing process. It seems to me that the only ones who are made to follow the process are those items in which there isn't support for, or items that we push to the side for so long until we couldn't push it aside anymore. And we say, well, you didn't follow the process. That seems to be a pattern. And maybe it has not been brought to the attention of this council for a lack of diversity, so to speak. But as a member of this community, African-American member, I'm telling you what it looks like. I'm telling you what it appears to be. For example, the disparity study. And I don't want to rehash old bones and let sleep and die as lay, but the disparity study was brought before city council. And it was, well, you guys raise half of the money first before we'll put up the other half, meet us halfway, and we'll do a disparity study. The voting rights case, which this body is appealing. Something in the water. All of these items that come before council, what's the common denominator? And yet they're made to follow a more stringent process. I'm a process person. I think there's definitely merit to hearing things, but actually that comes before you decide on a budget. I am a process person. I will agree to that. What I'm saying is the perception as what it appears to be anytime a minority wants to do something before this body, it's you didn't follow step A, or it goes by you didn't get to quite C. When we have seen other people come before this body and we dole out millions of dollars. I'm just stating the obvious. And again, that may not be the intentions of this body, but I'm telling you what it appears to be.
Okay, Barbara and John.
Well, I would just like to rebut that a bit, because I'm looking at the last year's applications to the Arts and Humanities Commission and what was approved and what was disapproved, and that's what we're going by. The Military Aviation Museum requested $22,000. They got zero. The Tidewater Winds requested $6,000. They got zero. The Virginia Beach Volunteer Rescue Squad for a mural requested $3,000. They got zero. So, I mean, all of these, and many of them requested certain amounts but got less. The Arts for Learning Virginia requested $14,000, got $3,500. The Ballet Virginia International requested $40,000, got $27,600, and so forth. The Little Theater of Virginia requested $25,000, got $23,000. It's all here. The Virginia African American Cultural Center requested $10,000 and got $10,000. So, I mean, here's the list of who went through the vetting process and what they got and what they didn't get. But at least they went through the process. And, you know, to go around this process and come to this body is not what we ask people to do. And that's what I'm talking about. And you know, I just look at all of these groups that are doing what they're supposed to do, and very few of them get what they ask for. And I think if we're going to require some to do this, then it should be the requirement for everybody. I think to do this is just circumventing what we have set up as being what we ask people to do. And then, of course, there's the other group, the COG group, that has the non-cultural items, and they do the very same thing. And that's what I'm talking about. I think some of the things that you were discussing were not the types of grants that we're looking at here. I'm
Okay.
sorry, it was misunderstood.
John and then Aaron.
I just want to address the larger question made. I think my colleague would recognize I vote no on a lot, not just who it is, it's what it is. And, and anyone who's watched me or who has the time to want to watch this on a regular basis knows I don't care what your profession is, if you're my best friend forever or whatever it is, it's the merits. And I don't look about who, I apply that same principle, and I think he would agree that that's true. And
You're
and
consistent. You're consistent.
and I just want that to be clear. And when I think something's not right, like when we were doing the independent oversight and the legal counsel on that issue, and I made that strong case that we weren't on the right track, I mean, I speak out on the merits. I just don't want anybody watching or walking away thinking that in any way do I look at the ethnicity, the political party that you belong to, but on the merits of the issue. And when we don't follow the process, no matter what it is, and I'm pretty good about following it, and that's how I vote. And I just want to make that clear.
Okay, Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Moss and Councilwoman Henley. Here's a question. How many times has a Juneteenth program come before this body and asked for money? That's a question. The other point is also the Arts and Humanity Commission is not the only process that we have. It's not the only way to get funded. Yeah, because you don't go to the Arts and Humanity Committee to get funded doesn't mean you're not somehow following the process. There are other ways to be funded. And particularly in this case, and I'm speaking to this before I even knew there was an actual ask, when they sought to get help and advice and guidance and to hear their presentation to a certain committee, they were pushed away and said, no, we don't want to hear it. It's going to be too political. We are the last resort. This is the last line. We hold that authority whether or not to approve something or not. But again, that's also what's built into our city is equity. Equity should be built into our city. Things that we have missed before that come before us, we have to find a way to support because that's what it's about, progressing, moving our city forward together. Yeah, we may have missed things in the past, but we see it now. Let's correct those wrongs, those mistakes, those errors, those oversights. That's how this is about, when I see it, it's about building in that equity. And so I understand the process. I get that. I've been streaming process with everything we do since we came on this body. So, but again, we have to stop this pattern of deciding what groups are going to follow the process and what groups don't. And so that's where we are. Again, but that question again is, how many times has a Juneteenth event or a group try to support Juneteenth come before this council and ask for support?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Berlucci has?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Berlucci would like to make a comment. Councilmember Berlucci, you are unmuted and may begin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Barnes. Well, I just want to express my support for this request and for this project. I agree with so much of what Councilman Rouse said, and I thank him for expressing those points of view. I also respect the opinions and the positions of those on council who are emphasizing the need for process. I do support the request for the Process Improvement Committee to look at this a little bit more closely and find out if we can create efficiencies. But Mr. Rouse correctly pointed out, we deviate from the process multiple times. And this coalition of community partners and advocates who are tested, trusted, and well-respected in Virginia Beach came to us, and the process failed them. Collectively as a city, we failed them. They came to a city-appointed board subcommittee with volunteers. They were dismissed. Their ideas were never given the free opportunity to compete and to get the attention and review of this body, which I think their request is meritorious and deserving of that review. It did not receive it. It was an unfair treatment. And I think that our process failed them. We can't continue to fail them. I agree that there are efficiencies we must consider and implement in the future, but I think it's really important now to support this request. We've already failed them once or twice. We shouldn't fail them again. And time is of the essence. Thank you.
I just want to point out a distinction here because this is a festival. It's the Juneteenth festival. This is the first time we're having a festival for unity in our community. Now, this is the first time I've heard about a festival going through any one of those processes. The Patriotic Festival doesn't go through that. The Neptune Festival, they don't go through that. Something in the Water didn't even go through that. So whatever process we're talking about here, we do need to make sure we clarify it and we follow it. I did hear someone say, a couple people say, this is a one-time thing. No, it's not. In terms of the Juneteenth festival, it'll be back. It's annual. It's a national holiday. We as the body deemed it a holiday in our city. It's for the citizens of Virginia Beach. It's for the community. So this is not going to be a one-time thing. It's coming back next year, the year after that, the year after that. So if you need to prepare your processes, prepare it. Make sure you stick to it. Write it out. They'll be back. What you're going to do for one, again, you know, Neptune, Patriotic, all these different festivals, let's be fair across the board and let's do it the right way. But this is not going to be the last time we're going to have a Juneteenth festival. So let's get ready to celebrate, come together, have unity in the community. Looking forward to it.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, vote's open.
Councilmember Bellucci, may I have your verbal vote?
I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. By a vote of 9-2, you have passed the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to the resource management plan and Section A, the reconciled proposal. I will read each of the things involved under which the public will be allowed to address. A reconciled proposal for fiscal 2022 and 23 operating budget. Ordinance to appropriate $3,354,574,046 consisting of $656,969,389 interfund transfers and $251,274,350 for internal service funds and $2,456,333,307 for operations for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30th of 2023. Number 2, ordinance to establish a tax levy of 99 cents on each $100 of assessed valuation on real estate for fiscal year 2023. Number 3, ordinance to establish a tax levy on personal property and machinery and tools for calendar year 2023. Number 4, ordinance to authorize the city manager to submit an annual funding plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and urban development. Number 5, ordinance to amend city code, sections A, 35 through 64 and 35 through 67, exemptions or deferral real estate taxes for elderly or disabled persons. Part B, 35 through 137, 35 through 159, 35 through 185, and 35 to 207 revenue for the Tourism Investment Fund, TIP, and Tourism Advertising Program, TAP funds. C, 21 through 501 technology fees. D, 33 through 72 technology fees. E, 8 through 31, 8 through 8-31, 8-31.1, 8.32, 8.33, 8.34, and 8-37 rate increase permit fees. 6, ordinance to reaffirm the city's commitment and clarify the scope of the open space program. And, Part B of this, the fiscal 2020-23 capital budget. Item 1, ordinance to adopt the fiscal 2022 through 23 through fiscal year 2027 to 28 capital improvement program, CIP, and appropriate $387,493,552 fiscal year 2022 to 23 capital budget, subject to funds being provided from various sources set forth herein. And item number 2, under capital, ordinance to authorize the issuance of general obligation public improvement bonds in the maximum amount of $69,107,404 for various public facilities and general improvements. And number 3, ordinance to authorize the issuance of storm water utility system review bonds in the maximum amount of $2,177,367. And then finally, ordinance to authorize the issuance of water and sewer system revenue bonds in the maximum amount of $22,597,430. Okay, do we have speakers?
Mayor, so everyone signed up just on the budget in general, not for reconciled or not for Councilmember Moss's, as has been in the past. So do you want to go ahead and read Councilmember Moss's?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and, read that at this point also. Okay? Okay, with Councilmember Moss's proposal, A, fiscal year 22-23 operating budget. Item number 1, ordinance to appropriate, $3,345,419,868, consisting of $662,327,512 in interfund transfers, $251,274,350 for internal service funds, and $2,431,818,006 for operations for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending July 30th, 2023. Number 3, ordinance to establish tax levy of 91 17/100 cents on each $100 of assessed value on real estate for fiscal year 2023. Ordinance to establish tax levy on personal property and machinery and tools for calendar year 2023. B, the fiscal year 2022-23 capital budget. Number one, ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2022-23 through fiscal year 2027 through 28 capital improvement budget, CIP, approximately $337,169,700 for fiscal year 22 to 23 capital budget. Funds, subject to funds being provided from various sources set forward within. And this incorporates 10 ordinances from the reconciled proposal. Item Roman number 2-.3 A-4, 5, A through E and 6, and Roman numeral 2.3 A-B-2, 3, and 4. Okay, any speakers?
Yes, the first speaker is Barbara Messner. After Ms. Messner is Mrs. Marsh.
Good evening.
Where's my timer at?
I'm aware of all the budget meetings you've had in the past, and you admitted budget meetings are supermajority, 7 votes, not a quorum, and they have to be here in person. Berlucci cannot discuss the budget or vote from out of town. Okay, it is illegal and confusing notices on the city's website. On printed notices, including false voting information on the agenda. You discriminate. How dare you talk about discrimination? You're not even running for your office. You know, you don't talk about certain races. I'm tired of the dividing us. You discriminate against poor, middle class, while pandering to specific people. Blacks, Hispanics, dog owners, gamblers, etc. Your private developers. The budget, like I said, is supermajority. It's not a quorum. This is not a pandemic. Ms. Henley, you're not wearing your blue rubber gloves, Playtex gloves. You're not wearing your mask. You know, you don't have any reason to be calling this special meeting. And Howard Hanna does finance with Town Bank. We have money in Town Bank. The pictures, which I didn't print out, of you and Miss Ross Hammond hugging Town Bank Bear, and you know, your family stock, $250,000 just 1 year auditing Town Bank from the family company. I'd like to know how many people sitting in here are your staff. Okay, everything is a total shell game. You use CIP, capital improvement, for private projects, developers who fund your campaigns, and the debt bond is a total lie. You can't fix destroyed woodlands, and soil. And these alternative budgets are just an absolute insult. And then the 6-5 vote. Berlucci should not be voting. And people who don't show up for half the meeting shouldn't be voting. Yeah, Gold Key, 99-year illegal contract. Okay, this is the printed agenda. This is the old system. You go back and forth between saying at large, and then you on the website you have something different, and you're spending all this money. And over here, you've applied to change the name. Somebody in planning, it's not legal.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mrs. Marsh.
You're welcome.
She's not here. Jerome Bell. Mr. Bell. Sarah Gerloff. And after Ms. Gerloff will be Alfred Mcclenny.
God bless you. Good evening.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You just give those words lip service because it is evident you have forgotten their meaning. You do not respect God's law since you violate our constitutional rights, therefore you are not under God. You work to divide us. You infringe upon our liberty, and you clearly do not believe in equal justice for all, since here you still sit blatantly committing crime after crime. Our rights to life, liberty, property, and pursuit of happiness are unalienable gifts from our Creator. By coercing us to pay these gifts, you have been extorting money from us, trespassing against us. By taking these gifts, you have been extorting money from us, trespassing against us, by taking money from the working class and spending it on business trips, artwork, festivals, and subsidies. You have used our money to benefit the few instead of the whole. These are examples of embezzlement and have contributed to the unsustainable debt that you have helped cause. Our town is now rife with crimes such as drug trafficking, prostitution, which is human trafficking, gambling, bribery, fraud, money laundering, extortion, embezzlement, obstruction of justice and criminal investigations, and sexual exploitation of our children. The broad term for all this criminal activity is racketeering, and groups that engage in such activity are known as organized crime rings. It appears that what happened in Vegas did not stay in Vegas. The Good Old Boy Network decided to turn our home into Sin City. When you sow crime, you reap more and more crime. You have had a hand in creating the danger and the debt the people here now face. Since we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, it is we, the people, that is the true government. We hold the power while you are the servant government elected to serve us by following our Constitution. By kicking God's law of the land to the curb, you have usurped the true government and warred against God. We can clearly see you have not served us for some time. We have taxation without representation. Who do you serve? Shakespeare was right. All the world is a stage. The curtain has been pulled and the credits are rolling so that we, the people, may see who all the bad actors are. You have been chess pawns being played by the devil. You have traded money for time, and your time has run out. You have trespassed against many, and you have hell to pay. You have treated your fellow man terribly. I am so disappointed in you because you have committed treason, and you will be responsible for your actions. I have copies of laws that you have violated here. If anyone would like a copy, it is very important that you know your rights as we peacefully and lawfully restore that which God gave us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Alfred Mcclenny. Alfred Mcclenny. Oh, sorry. And after Mr. Mcclenny will be Craig Hansen.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Let me begin by thanking Mayor Dyer and City Manager Duhaney and all who sat before us on council. The special thanks going to Councilman Rouse for his tireless support for adequate compensation for public works employees. Thank you, sir. Like yourselves, I've been given the responsibility for the well-being of others, being a licensed reverend. I've stood before you before, but I've never used my title as such because I'm a waste management employee, and I wanted to be viewed in that regard at the time. Tonight, I'm Reverend Mcclenny. But with all humility, as you all are servants, I take on the same responsibility, but only with the servant's heart, because that's the only way that we can truly serve each other. That being said, the process and my disappointment in matters pertaining to how we've been treated, the hesitancy and the resistance that surrounded the issues that we've brought before you as Waste Management. There's been a lot of progress, and for that, we thank you so much. When all of us here that are present can attest to the fact that these things that are coming to pass are long overdue. This day and time, no man should be pleading or bargaining to be treated fairly. Because at the end of the day, that's all we've ever asked, was to be treated fairly. After all, that's what we've all been called to do. We have authority. You all have authority. I have authority in my position as a minister to see to the well-being of other people. You all been tasked to do the same thing. And all I ask is that we look deeply within ourselves and make sure that we're doing this. And finally, we must address what got us here in the first place. And that's the racial and social, economic inequality that has plagued this city, this state, this nation for years. We cannot continue to overlook it. It has been noted as being the elephant in the room. But what I'm telling you, if we ignore this elephant, it will be detrimental to the advancement of future decisions that you all may be faced with. We have to address the issue because there was a place that got us to where we are. And I'm saying to you, we must address the racial inequalities that so plague us, that we will never find ourselves back in this predicament again. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Craig Hansen. After Mr. Hansen is Delcino Miles. Is she here too?
Good evening.
City Council, Mayor, City Manager. I came to speak on the exemption or deferral of real estate tax for elderly or disabled persons. I'm bringing this up because I think you're correct, Mr. Rouse. There's some things that just aren't followed along the way, or people follow, people don't follow. And a lot of my issues over the past 4 years, all with my injury and disability, I'm sorry, in my past 4 years of dealing with my injury and my disability matters, from my mobility devices to my land variance for my medical disability needs to my fence and just my property in general. A lot of things have been pushed on me by different departments in this city, being 100% when I came, and also dealing with the Commissioner of Revenue's office. And for 3 years it took me, well, it didn't take me, it took the city 3 years to hear me, listen to me, was that on their own forms, they weren't following policy procedure. It was pumped down me, this is a Dillon estate, and so 100% was added. And then it was the nonchalant by Eric Smoody, who he did apologize, and finally I apologized, removed the 100% mistake. Well, it had been there by Nagona Midnights for 10 years. That's a lot of council members, that's a lot of eyes that just overlooked it. And so also about the budget, a good example of things not looked out for people. In '81, this council approved the Virginia Beach Trail, and well, it's gone nowhere. And so whatever I can do to help the council, the city, to try to get Fendel grant money or wherever. I mean, I've lived in this town since 1980, and I have children that are 27 and 17, and they haven't seen the trail yet either. And so it's generations and generations are going, except for Norfolk Avenue, that's completed. But anything you can do for disabled people and elderly, I just urge you to try to do, and thank you again.
Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it.
Delcino Miles. I don't see her. Well, she is here. Perfect. Hi. I'm sorry. Are you speaking too?
Good evening.
Evening. Good evening, Mayor Dyer, Vice Mayor Wilson, City Council members. I'm Delcino Miles, President of Virginia Beach Vision, and I'm speaking on behalf of our Board of Directors. And as communicated in our May 6th correspondence to you, there are several budget items of particular interest to us. We're pleased that the budget reconciliation includes an allocation of $140,000 for the VIBE district, combined with the recommended $60,000 Arts Commission grant. The VIBE will receive $200,000 in continued city support. And in its 5 years since inception, the VIBE has proven itself to be a successful business and visitor destination, giving the resort area a unique flair. We urge the council to continue its support of the region's Economic Development Alliance into the next year without contingencies. Vision believes it is important that Virginia Beach, as the largest city, embrace its role as a regional leader, marketing Hampton Roads as an internationally competitive location for business is integral to our economic success. And the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Arts, MoCA, has made significant strides in building a reputation as an accredited, nationally recognized art museum, with its emphasis on bringing world-renowned artists to Virginia Beach. It offers a year-round attraction for visitors and residents. The ability to actively market its featured exhibits is an investment toward continued success. And we encourage City Council to consider making an additional $300,000 annual allocation to MoCA for this purpose. So I want to thank you for your attention and your consideration.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Andy Bond. After Mr. Bond is Dr. William Duke.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for your service. If I've done my math right, $7.83. Asking for 7.83 cents. We are going to need 7.83 cents. No one can dispute that there is a ton of inflation going on around us. That's too much money for too few goods. So the price of each good goes up because the value of each dollar goes down. So on my way here, I went to Wawa and I saw that a gallon of milk costs $5. So we can predict, given all the spending that's occurred, that price is going to increase significantly. So let's say $8. So what I would ask is that if you can do at 91.17 cents of a levy instead of 99, that would benefit a lot of people. I think Councilman Moss has given you a proposal that does that. So it shows that you can do what needs to be done without harming employees, without harming flooding, but that allows us to have that 783, because I think we're going to need it for milk. And I would appreciate you voting in support of Councilmember Moss's proposal. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Dr. William Duke. After Dr. Duke is Diana Howard.
Oh, just for me. Thank you so much.
Can't,
Good evening.
can't really cover.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Got a big vote tonight, right? Budget. Ooh. Are you nervous? I certainly would be if I were in your place. And by that, I mean if I were planning to raise real estate tax rates in this inflationary environment after the recent property assessments with a recession looming. And especially if I was hoping to be reelected. Wow, that's just not going to happen, is it? Not after tonight. I can tell you all, as if you don't already know it, that libertarians are against the tax rate. I'm vice chairman of the Tidewater Libertarian Party, by the way. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. I know the Tea Party folks are very much against it, and despite the betrayal of their local leadership, the Republicans will be too. It's certainly noteworthy that Governor Youngkin is against increased local taxes throughout the state at this time. And as for the Democrats, I don't really care what they might think. Now, this won't just impact homeowners. I'm a homeowner in Virginia Beach, too. Probably renters will feel the pinch most as the homeowners pass the taxes on to them. Now, happily, there's a way out of this mess. Thanks to the diligent work of Councilman John Moss, you've been presented with a carefully crafted revenue-neutral budget, which meets the city's needs. It also increases the pay to the and benefit bonuses for the least well-paid employees of the city. And it actually reduces the real estate tax rate from what it is at present. So I assume it's clear that when he makes this alternate proposal today, that you're going to race each other to second his proposal, aren't you all, right? Now, Mr. Holcomb, I've talked to you a few times. You seem like a really pleasant, amiable, well-spoken fellow. And you and John at least see eye to eye when you're standing up. So no one else does. So I do hope you will second his motion, and maybe even vote for it. Wouldn't that be something if somebody voted for John Moss's proposal? So I just hope you all get out of off the tax raising business. Get out of that business one way or another. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Diana Howard. After Ms. Howard is Elaine Feckerty.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Diana Howard, and I'm the chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party. And he's right, we do not support this reconciliation budget. You know, since last June, people who are trying to make ends meet, the amount of those people have increased 85%. We have an increase of 130 foreclosures, and yet you want to increase the real estate tax. And it is an increase. It is not decreasing it by 2 cents. It's increasing it by 9. So 9%. So you went through listening to everybody come down here and ask you for more spending, and you found offsets to do festivals, museums, cultural arts and humanities. You know, you've increased everybody's wants, the Vibe District and everything. But for the taxpayers, you didn't do that due diligence. The tip is getting an extra $7.5 million in the meals tax, an extra $4.5 million in the amusement tax. Yet you'd rather put $12 million in the CIP in case you want to buy something down at the oceanfront. You'd rather spend $11 million to beautify Atlantic Avenue, another $17 million to do the sports infrastructure. We just built the sports center. You want to put an extra $5 million on that. And here we are adding 52 more employees when we have 800 employees, positions not filled. That makes absolutely no sense. So we're going to have a general fund balance at the end of the year, and in the CIP in the fiscal year 2023, you have $29 million. $29 million there. Really? Couldn't we use that for decreasing the real estate revenue? Couldn't we use the city council's priorities, $12 million there? Shouldn't your priority be lowering the tax rate for residents? It seems to me you think your spending of our money is more important than what we would spend money on. You know, like it's not important for that family to have that birthday party for their child. It's more important for you to have it. I don't think that's correct, is it? Don't you think we deserve a real estate rate that we can all live with? You're giving employees raises, and that's a good thing. But you're giving them a raise in one hand, and you're taking it out of their pocket in the other. Do you think they're going to be able to afford a house now? They couldn't afford it before. You're raising the real estate rates. And with inflation increasing, only prices are going to go up. And you're getting more revenue from all the increased pricing in goods. All those taxes are coming in, yet you won't give it back to us. It's unfair.
Thank you.
Vote for John Councilman.
The next speaker is Elaine Feckerty. After Ms. Feckerty is Martha McLeese.
Good evening.
It's like deja vu all over again, isn't it? A lot of what I wanted to say has been covered, but I'll talk anyway. I was at both of the public hearings. I tried to make sense of where you were all coming from on that. And that's one of the things I want to address tonight. In years past, and we do this little song and dance every year, you find something that you need to raise the tax on, and you hang your hat on that, and you implore us to go along with it. 4 years ago, it was full-day kindergarten. 3 years ago, it was stormwater and trash fees. You had something identifiable that you were raising. We still didn't agree with it, but you did it, but you had a reason. Tonight, you've got a tale of two budgets. And as it's already been pointed out, one is John Moss's at 91 cents, which
Again, I will repeat this because I haven't heard this tonight. 91 cents is the revenue neutral rate that you are required by state law to adopt without voting to change that. When you vote to change that, I hope every single one of you owns that vote. And that is why I second Mr. Duke's suggestion. I need someone, look into your heart, look into your soul, to second Mr. Moss's motion. You don't have to vote for it, but second it, because we, the people, deserve to know the logic behind your reconciliation budget and why that is more important right now than his budget is. Because the public perception, to piggyback off of Mr. Rouse tonight, the public perception of this body right now is that you do not listen and you do not represent the people of this city. That is why there's a whole slew of candidates waiting in line that know you're supposed to be the voice of the people and represent the people. People were here begging you for a livable wage for public works. Both budgets do that. Thank you. But Mr. Moss's budget does it retroactive back to July 1st and doesn't raise their real estate taxes. The reconciliation budget is not retroactive, and as Ms. Howard said, you're putting money in one pocket and taking it out of the other with the tax increase. It makes no sense. The public does not understand it. The public is hurting. They are hurting badly. This is not the year that you can pass this tax increase and think they will forget about it. This has significant consequences to everyone, including small businesses, which we haven't talked about, because everyone's disposable income, if they have any left at this point, will be gone with this tax increase, and your small businesses will suffer.
The next speaker is Martha McLeese. You don't want to speak? Okay. And then we have one speaker via WebEx, Ms. Corey Hill. Ms. Hill, you may begin speaking. You are unmuted.
Okay. Thank you for all of the speakers that I've watched. I say amen, amen to all of you who came up and addressed the council. I agree with what Mr. Moss is trying to get through. I agree with that 1,000%. We have pushed, I had a lot of other things to say, but that was it about the property taxes, is that they've already raised, what our houses are worth. So they're already getting a major increase of that. And then to raise the rates is going to be it's going to be lunatical, because we cannot, many of us are middle class. Even though we are educated and professionals, we have been stuck at this middle class level throughout our lives, depending on when you graduated. Right now, if you're self-employed and you have a 401k, we've lost it again, because we are forced to invest in ourselves, and we're reliant on the stock market, which we have no control over either. So again, I'm losing my 401k. For the second time in my lifetime, I'm asking you, first of all, we also, on top of this real estate tax, they have managed to push through a flooding bond, which we are going to be responsible for in our real estate taxes. Not only I did all my homework on that bond, but the bond was pushed through, and I live in a place that I have not been able to leave my house just about since Saturday evening. It's flooding. They want to tell me it's because of where I live, but it is not. This is caused by the city not engineering the drains to work because they're not geared. They're not the road, whatever. The property is not slanted, so it goes into the drain, and then they've slanted the road so it pours in, so it floods the roads. And they let people do whatever they want to do, even though they found out about global warming years ago. They still allow homes to be built without grading the driveway so that the water can seep through, and people, just pave every bit of their property now to form extra parking spaces, which has kept where I live, which is the beginning of Bay Island, flooded by man-made things for the last 4 days. Even though the water has risen, the flooding is caused by something people have done recently. So we're asking you to be fair, to be equitable, to be all treated equally, everybody the same. Not all of us get automatic housing allowance raises. We are competing with.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first item up for consideration is the reconcile proposal as read previously. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve under 3A, the reconcile proposal, and that's everything under little a, which is the operating budget, and everything under little b, the capital budget. Is that adequate, Mr. Stiles?
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I have a substitute motion to make.
Yes.
The adoption of item B of that, number 2 in the budget. And I'd like you to, in making my substitute motion of a presentation I want to make.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I get a chance to make my motion, have a discussion about it before a second's required.
No, I believe a second is required.
Not for me to present the reason why I'm making the motion itself.
Well, I'll second it so he can get a chance to do that. That doesn't mean I'm going to vote for it.
Understand.
Okay.
If you would, please.
She's getting it now, Mr. Moss.
While they're doing that, I do have a little intro, and it's not long, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate people's time. What has brought us here today is the highest inflation in 40 years. It is increasing with no signs of abating until 2023 at the earliest. Record overperforming revenue sources, far in excess of what the city manager said we should expect last November in our 5-year forecast, even before taking into consideration the $81 million in surplus of last year, mostly due to under-execution and overperformance of revenues. We entered this budget process with overperformance of revenues that mirror those of the state. Governor Youngkin has, consistent with his theme to make government more affordable and lessen the burden on working families and seniors, has pursued a number of initiatives, permanent and temporary, to provide tax relief to his fellow Virginians suffering under double-digit inflation and rising cost of government for the necessities of life. I empathize with the governor's difficulties in getting a majority of the Senate to set aside power politics and special interest just for a moment to do what is right by working families, seniors, and employees by sharing overperformance revenues with the people who earn them. I've heard the voices, and I won't get a second, and thank you, Mrs. Henley, and the voices that my vote will pass. But my only motivation in doing these alternative budgets is to do my duty to the best of my ability to preserve the people who earn their money to keep it. My peers have come to a different conclusion on the art of the possible, and politics is about difference of opinion. This is my view. This was the view of Amanda, the email she wrote to City Council on April 26th, the email that I read into the record last Tuesday, May the 3rd. An email from a mom, a spouse, a teacher, working 2 jobs, sharing the financial details of her life and her daily financial struggle to hang on. She concluded, begging us not to increase the taxes on her families. Americans aren't generally people who bare their souls, and for them to bear that soul in that manner speaks to the depth of the financial and the despair that she's dealing with, the despair and lack of hope that the proposed increase in 99 cents only magnifies. Of course, I'm working off the baseline budget just like the reconciliation, which was the city manager's budget. The proposal that I have lets $69.8 million stay in the hands of families and businesses that otherwise would have been taken in the form of increased bills to residents and businesses under the city manager's proposal. I'll talk later about the other proposal. It also, because I found $80 million in offsets before I learned that we had increased revenues from the state for paying people, that would add to that. It adds $11.25 million in employee compensation for very targeted purposes. Not to mention, it also defers by 1 year the need to impose the real estate tax to cover the bond referendum, because in the end, the bond referendum is about a revenue requirement. And that revenue requirement next year is $28 million, and we can satisfy that one-time deferral for 1 year only by coming up with $28 million in cash, and I'm sure people would appreciate that reduction to 4.1%. I'm sure people are wondering where this money comes, and this is one-time money because it comes from one-time sources. $5 million, we've talked a lot about longevity raises, but my experience has been you get people to stay longer in the future by what? Retention incentives and recruitment incentives, which weren't provided for in the $32.8 million. This won't cover a lot of positions, but I hope it covers some of those critical IT positions we have a hard time filling in today's demand market, but that would be the city manager's call. The other thing I heard a lot from the employees talking about how little they work for today. Forget July 1st going forward, making less than $15 an hour. This provision of $6.25 million more than covers the cost of retroactively advancing their salaries as if they received $15 an hour on July 1st of last year. I think that's the least that we can do because that inflation has been occurring and it's getting worse. While I professionally share the conclusion of the city manager recommendation against the step plan for the flexibility that it takes away, my budget proposal does not preclude the city manager from implementing such a plan because that is the direction of my peers. I have found that beach residents that I've talked to really don't have an opinion because they really don't understand all the implications, so I defer to the judgment of my peers, and I have no objections to that. But at the same time, there's another segment of people we have to address when we talk about stakeholders. There's the employees, the taxpayers, the employers, and the bond referendum. I think I addressed that top level, all three of those, but there'll be more. Next is just a summary of where we are. And I think that when people talk about taxes and raising more money, that's not free. When you raise more revenue, there is friction. You pay a cost somewhere. When you take that money out of the private sector, it's not spent in some transaction, not in some savings, not in some investment, whatever, and that is a revenue loss. So you're never going to, so somewhere in here, and I realize, unlike the national government, federal government, we don't have those sophisticated modeling tools, but there is an opportunity cost in revenue. You do not get 100% of that money. But what's more important is the implication of the opportunity cost that you don't see. The financial stress on families. Amanda's family, and she's one of many emails we received. I won't say hundreds of thousands, but I'd say I got several hundred of letters and emails that expressed the financial stress that they're causing. So there's an opportunity cost to smaller businesses, and we all know, or should know, that the money multiplier effect of a private spent dollar is much higher than one spent by government. It churns in the economy more, creates more jobs, creates more transactions. So it's probably close to double that in terms of the economic impact. But I think the social impact message that we send is we're kicking people while they're down. And I just think that's not right. Now, how did I get here? And I have a little pass out because this is because a lot of claims have been made relative to the school issue. And I just want to hit that head on. That's one. What I've done is I went back and looked at the CIP that we adopted in May of 2021, and then the CIP that we're adopting with this budget. Now, which one? Well, if the other one is passed, here you go, Barbara. I'm sorry. And what you're going to see if you'll turn from the second page, you're going to see one that says FY22 on the top, adopted, and the first page has Betty F. Williams. Because remember, we've heard in the reconciliation budget that this budget fully funds is the word, Betty F. Williams and Princeton High School. Well, what's amazing when you look at FY22 and you look at FY21, that amazingly, if you look at the bottom just to start, it says total program financing, $68,387,500, that's now. But in May, the one we adopted in May of 21 reads what? $68,387,500. So in both cases, just at the top line, these were fully funded in May of 2021. So there is no fully funded, and more importantly, there's no savings. And I know I heard that word a couple weeks ago. So now let's go up and look at the schedule. And and see what is changed about the schedule. So we here 122, or here 21. Now what you have is inspection and support in 2020 and 21 started in July 25. But in the budget we're adopting, it starts in July 28. Now, let's keep going. Now, the construction, I guess, which is not happening after the inspections, but now the construction in 22 is going to start in FY 25. Okay, so that's 25. And let's go here. The next one, construction starts, amazingly, July of 25. I heard accelerating is what I heard a weeks ago. I also heard savings before. So I'm having a hard time understanding what we funded differently in one from the other. Because it isn't costing less, and the delivery isn't sooner. So what's the material benefit of, now let's go see what that benefit is. So if you go across the top, this is the 23 budget. I think that's right, 23. Yes, we're going to start it in money appropriated to date. Now this is 7.5 million, and say, well, where did that come from? Because it was 0 when we had the approved budget. Well, that's in February 1st of this year, when we had the accelerated consideration over council's direction that we were going to ultimately do this all at the same time. But the vice mayor decided this needed a separate vote to be accelerated, and the council, as a majority, unanimously, had to abstain, voted. So that's where that $7.5 million comes from. But if you look across all this, money's moved forward, but look at the activities relative to them starting. They only have $4.6 million of activities that have to take place during the course of the budget we are executing with the adoption. And they already have 7.5 million. So there is no immediate need for additional cash in the year that we are talking about, which is FY22. So why shouldn't the taxpayers get the benefit of that 43.9 million that we did? So that's just Betty F. Williams. So let's just turn the page and look at Princess Anne High School. I think that's instructive. So you look at Princess Anne High School, once again, you look at the two documents, you look at the bottom left, and you can see that the program financing matches. And it's all programmed. There's nothing they need. It's $162,650,000. The same in both documents. So once again, no change in funding. This was fully funded in May of 21, and there is no change and there is no savings being claimed. So let's go up and look at the top. The appropriated to date in 23 shows $89,012,277. Well, that is, and that reflects that we made an additional appropriation to date in 22 with that. I don't know if it all came, but it doesn't look like this came from the 43 million because it's in the document as of May 21st. So I think that's, if you add those two together, you get that $89,012,277. So that money's there. Then it was budgeted, meaning programmed by the school board and approved by this body, that they would match up. We appropriated for 23, or programmed, I should say, $36,050,000. Well, we reduced the amount of the request by $2 million in the new budget. Once again, they're moving the money around, but the point I'm making is the delivery is the same, the start date is the same, but if you read the reconciliation letter, you would conclude that this budget fully funded something that wasn't fully funded before. All I can tell you is the facts and the material in the two budgets don't support the conclusion in that letter. Now, so the money is retrievable without any impact because it was fully programmed before the $43.9 million was ever made available. And so therefore, I'd rather bet on people having food on their table and gas in their tank today than in the out years of the CIP. Now, then we talked about elimination of, I noticed that didn't talk about $3.5 million for AstroTurf on high school fields. I think that any reasonable person would say when people are struggling, that's something that could wait. But yet we have cash being spent on that. It's just not right. I think in accounting system, they're still getting paid. That was $4 million. But my point being made is the risk that we are taking to get this done is imposing a risk that I find we're imposing on families by not getting tax relief that is unacceptable and undefendable. But that's my perspective. Each of us is accountable to the public. I got rid of the $7 million council emergent, I'll call it discretion fund, but emergent needs. I think families have bigger emergent needs than we do. I know I got pushback from a number of people on the discretion fund for on the contingency fuel plan, but in light of all the new money we got from the state and other things, that's even less of a risk. But I think families don't have a $500 fuel emergency fund in their budget, so I think that the city and families can have the same level of tough decision-making, and that's doable. We spent 15, I realize, I think that's a mark you all took in your reconciliation budget, but we just put 15 point something million into parks with the American Rescue Plan Act, so I thought $1 million risk was something that we could take and that the world wouldn't come to an end and the sun would still rise. And we always talk about TIFs and how ultimately they're going to be generating this revenue or dividend for our citizens. Now, the Sandbridge TIF is the only TIF that I know of to date that's ever generated till its disestablishment an annual $5 to $9 million dividend that we took and spent in the city budget. Well, there's a surplus. This is all these numbers have been certified by the budget director. These aren't uncertified, unreviewed numbers. And that was $1.7 million. I thought it was time to take a dividend. Maybe they can buy that 5-gallon milk. Lastly, this is a discussion that we'll take on the next slide because it takes a little bit of work to walk through this. And I want to thank Kevin and the budget shop director for helping me understand it, what I missed and what I got right. That was always good. Thank you, Kevin. But in the current year, and I think Ms. Howard talked about it, we've run around 830 to 860 of vacancies every bi-weekly period, all 26 throughout the year. That's a lot of money. And you're seeing that roughly that $30 million is in pay-go in the current CIP, which I didn't test. I do not like programmatic churn, so I didn't go after that. But I did notice that we had a 13.9 vacancy rate. Now, the city manager, in proposing his budget, took a vacancy rate of 1.6% to reduce his funding requirement, top line, by $8 million. Now, historically, we've rarely had more than 94%. So we've consistently had a 5 to 6% vacancy rate in the city looking back a number of years pre-COVID. Okay, that means that between 1.6 and 94, there's another amount there, 4.4% vacancy rate that we have historically experienced, even in good times. And those were not in today. And I said, well, how much money is that? So I did my little calculation. I started looking, and I said, well, where did that go? Well, we are so confident of that $22 million that it's programmed as pay-go in the FY23, FY24 budget. Now, again, that's one-time money. I used it for one-time purposes. So I think part of it was to get the additional dollars I needed for tax relief, and the rest of it, the $11.25 million, went to bonuses and paying people retroactively making less than $15 an hour. Now, like I said, we are currently at 86.1%. The structural labor market isn't looking all that robust. We are at 2.9% per our plan director of unemployment in our city. So I don't think it's unrealistic to suggest that we won't get past 94% on board next year. And rather than putting that money a year from now and reallocate it in the CIP, we need to pull that and take that savings today and have a realistic on-board count and use that partially for tax relief and partially to increase retroactively people making less than $15 an hour and also to reduce the real estate tax rate. And notice none of this is impacting anything in the operating budget. That is an important point to be making. So as a final summary of accounts, this is kind of like hits the top. I found 80 million. If you added in the extra couple million we got from the state, the $21 million for school construction they're getting from the state, and the $14 million HVAC grant, even some of the reductions that I took, they can buy those back. And now we're using the state tax relief to help us provide what? Local tax relief. But this is a summary. I don't think this is unrealistic. It's very executable, and it isn't putting any hardship, anything on the operating side. So in closing, if I could, I'm certain my peers believe as strongly as I do that they have found the right balance. This is a difference of opinion, and honorable people can have honorable differences. But the public needs to know there is a choice. A choice is being made. My choice could be the wrong one. I'm not the one to judge that, nor are my peers. And I'm not going to judge that they've made the wrong choice. The voters have to look and make the decision of what choice was the right choice. That's your job. But it's not only your job as an individual, you need to look beyond your own special interests and say, really, which of these budgets is best for the city as a whole? Because that's what I did. I'm not saying I got the right answer, but I'm showing that 91 cents is possible. Matter of fact, I think in light of some increased revenues from the state, less than 91% is possible, but that was late breaking news, and I wasn't about, and I couldn't find the time and sleep to work the future. But I'm showing the art of the possible. And tonight, I'm sharing with you, more the public than my peers, that 91 cents is possible. 91 cents, sun will still rise. Will rise with theirs too. But citizens will have more money in their pocket and better able to mitigate the tragedy of the conflation that we're having and not having to make choices. And I ask the people, there's a lot of Amandas out there with that email that I read last week. And I'm asking my peers, forget about what Mr. Moss had to say and what you think about my budget. What have you done for Amanda? And when you adopt whatever budget you adopt, what advice are you going to give Amanda and families like Amanda's about what they could cut in their needs because you couldn't cut your wants? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to make the substitute motion the primary. Okay. Any other discussion by members of City Council? The vote is open to make Mr. Moss's proposal the primary motion.
Don't close it. Councilmember Berlucci, may I have your verbal vote?
I vote no.
Thank you. Go ahead and close it, Terry. By a vote of 10 to 1, the substitute motion has failed.
But I do thank you, Barbara, very much for the second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now at this point, the primary motion is the adoption of the reconciliation vote. Okay, and we have a motion and a second about that.
May I
Yes,
make
Ms.
some comments?
Presentley.
I do know that Mr. Moss has worked very hard on his proposal, and I thought it was important that he had a chance to make his explanation. I'm sure we would be reading about it anyway, but I thought it was important to hear it now, and I think he's got some very strong points. I don't think this budget that we have before us is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I've got some problems with parts of it, some of it being those earmarks that were put in that don't recognize our community organization grant process and our other process that we had talked about earlier with the Arts and Humanities Commission. I think we've got to stop that. I hope this will be the last time we slip any of that stuff in. In hearing some of the presentations we had, I think it's really important that for the veteran who spoke, that we are expecting that in this coming year, there will be 4,095 veterans who get tax relief participation with our program. We have not talked enough about our tax exemption for qualifying seniors. That goes up this year to $67,599 being the top that you're eligible for some exemption. Total exemption, $51,588 income. So we do have programs for people who are in need, particularly with our seniors and our veterans and our people who are disabled, and I hope people will take advantage of these programs. We have opportunities for small businesses and for nonprofits and for all kinds of folks, and I wish we could give everything to everybody, but I think we really have to be conservative in what we do and make certain that we are doing the best that we can, and I think that's what we have come up with. I think we did have two very compelling things to meet this year, and not for it to be a one-time budget, but we did have to and do have to deal with the bond referendum and the flooding issues, and we do have this in here, and I hope it's not a one-time thing. I hope that this is something that is going to be able to be absorbed within this tax rate for the coming years as we expect it to be. And we also very definitely needed to work with our workforce and make certain that we are properly paying the people who are working for the people as city employees and delivering the services. And I think those two were really compelling needs that we had to deal with in this budget. And maybe we haven't got it perfect, but I think we're really moving in that direction. And so I'm going to vote for the budget as proposed. And we'll certainly be working with it throughout the year. And I appreciate all the work that Mr. Moss has done and his suggestions, and I hope we can incorporate some of that as we go forward. Thank you.
Aaron and then Rosemary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say, throughout this budget process, again, it really takes some leadership in getting that done and coordinating with each council member and trying to make sure we can have a reconciliated budget. So thank you, Vice Mayor Wilson, definitely for that. Throughout this budget and throughout last year's budget as well, I'm a strong advocate for our staff, and that's not to say this council isn't, because without this council, none of the things that I've advocated for would have been approved. Last year, advocated for the salary and compensation increase for staff and our first responders, and this body sought so to support that as well. And so I want to thank council for that. And this year, supporting our staff, without staff, without the men and women in public works, without our first responders, without public utilities, without our clerk and her staff, without Mark, if you take a look around this room, this city does not operate without our employees and its workforce. And so, again, in order to make sure we can take care of them so they can take care of us, I consider that a strong priority in this staff for this budget going forward. And as a single member of this council and an at-large member, you can't get anything done by yourself. And so this is not to say, it was my advocacy, that's not how this works. It takes a team effort. And so for that, I want to thank this body and making sure we can support the members who work for our city, who protect our city, who keep our city open. I advocated for hazard pay for our men and women in public works last year and was able to get that done with the help of this body. And so, again, this is not a single member sport. It takes, a majority to get anything done. And I truly want to thank staff again for supporting that, which brings me to my other viewpoint on, the disparity study. I want to take another look at that and see where we are today to make sure we don't fall behind on that. So I'd like to take, a look at that and kind of refresh that and make sure we stay on par with that. But again, I think it's been long past noon since our men and women in public works have gotten their just due. And even though we consider this a strong effort in making up for that, it's just a start. And so, again, I just want to thank this body, I want to thank staff, and I want to thank the men and women in public works and public utilities, and all our employees and first responders for what they do, keeping our city open and keeping our city moving forward. And so, Mr. Mayor, thank you to this body and to this council for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, Rosemary, then Rocky.
First of all, I want to thank Kevin Chanticleer. I called him Monday morning and said, gee, I didn't even call you over the weekend, because we have been in such close contact with working through this and working closely with the mayor and our city manager, and then from very early on trying to reach out to talk to everybody here to get your early insights into this budget. And I think it's come together very well. It was very complicated. This was a very difficult budget for us to get through, but this council has risen to the challenge. Stacey Parker called me yesterday and she says, what's the top 3 things about this budget? And I said, well, first of all, we did our best to look out for the taxpayers. When the manager handed out his budget, it was $1.13.
Yep.
Is that?
Mhm.
It was $1.13, and I said, we've got to lower that. We've got to. We don't want to do that. And he says, he and Kevin both look like, oh my gosh, we got to find $16 million. But you did it. You found the $16 million. So essentially, what we were trying to say is, we're really bringing it down to 95 cents, and then we are going to put 94.9 cents, and then put the 4.1 cents in for the bond referendum, so that we were able to keep a flat rate. And please know that personal property tax was a really big deal. We have lowered the rate, not the rate, but the percentage of the car by 25%. But not just this year, this June, but we're also doing it for next year. And I don't know any other city in the region that's doing that. So we're doing personal property 2 years in a row, and we really need to be aware of that there's going to be a tax break there. Barbara, thank you for talking about senior citizens and how that's gone up, the amount that people qualify for, and also for bringing to the attention on the Sandbridge SSD. And don't forget the things that Mr. Kellen brought to us about the personal property for businesses that we gave a break on, and also for the senior citizens and disabled, we gave breaks there. So we have worked through this budget, and we really have tried to look out for the taxpayers. So that's what I told her we did first. And then secondly is our employees. We really value our employees. They are the ones who get things done. They're the ones who keep this city moving. They're the glue that keeps us together. And we're policymakers. We couldn't do it without our employees. This was a major sea change in how we compensate them. This is a really big deal, what we're going to do tonight. In fact, it's going to take them 2 months to get the payroll straight, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Dehaney?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
But it's the right thing to do. It was absolutely the right thing to do. We needed to make sure that people are paid fairly and that they're able to earn a living wage. And $15 an hour was not in Mr. Dehaney's budget, but we got it there. That was really, really important to get that $15 an hour. We didn't start out with doing a step system, but we heard from the public. And Mr. Rouse and I early on agreed we wanted to do it for everybody, but it wasn't quite possible to do it for everybody. There was a section of the non-exempt employees that really shouldn't be in the step system, but we did it for 80%. 80% of our employees are going to be on the step plan with 3% between each steps. And it was important to set the structure and get the structure right for this compensation plan. And hopefully we can build on it as each year goes on and things are good. So compensation was really huge for us, and for us to compete with the other the private sector and with the other cities, because there's only so many people, and this has been the time of the Great Resignation where people have left. We have to have people to keep our services going. And thirdly was the bond referendum. The people spoke. And I talked to Mr. Chanticleer today. I said, could we issue those bonds on this one-time money without having a direct revenue source? And I might get him to speak to that in a minute. But the rating agencies wouldn't take too well for it, and I'm not sure how we issue bonds without a revenue source, but I'll let him speak to it. But I did add one thing onto Stacy Parker's. I said the fourth is what we did for schools. We fully funded their budget too. Everything that they had in their budget, we funded, and they're getting a 5% raise. They're also getting a 42% break on their health insurance. And yes, we did move up the timeline on these schools because we got to get some things built. And so there's a whole lot of other things that I think that we've done well. And Ms. Henley, you're right, it's not perfect. I don't think there's ever been a perfect budget. But I think this one was a really major one that we've gotten through. And Kevin, would you mind coming up and talking about?
I want to ask questions too.
because I called you this morning and I said, what if we did one-time money this year for the bond referendum and issuing bonds? Would you mind sharing your response?
Certainly. So, obviously, during this typical part of the budget process, City Council's the policy setters, and City Council has the final say-so on what ultimately ends up where the city manager's proposed budget lands. City Council has a long history of establishing or setting sustainable operating budgets on a year-to-year basis. That's certainly not something that I envy City Council with. The math part's easy. I get the easy part in getting everything to balance out, but the real challenge is trying to find that balance in between what City Council is trying to do with this with the adopted 23 operating budget of providing tax relief, as well as sustainably operating and providing revenues for baseline services. So I think what we were talking about is, would I ever, come out of the gate in providing a recommendation to the city manager of utilizing one-time funds to maintain baseline services or to support a long-term obligation such as debt. And as a budget director, as a staff member, I wouldn't put that recommendation forward initially as part of the budget process. What I would be worried about is that doing so might potentially impact the city's credit rating or what bond rating agencies might be seeing from the city. But also the other thing I'd be worried about is not just the 1 year, but in the future. I'd be worried it'd put the city down a path in a direction where it'd be hard to avoid future reductions in services to without the sustainable revenue stream to maintain those baseline services.
Can I ask a question since this is
Let me finish up.
And again, I caveat all that by saying, again, that's me being a staff person where my world is just the budget and sustainable budgets, and obviously City Council, being the policymaker, has the ultimate say-so in what the future is of the city and the direction and the risk that the city's willing to take on.
But anyway, I don't know where you found him, but he's wonderful, and he's been a jewel to work with and fair to everybody. And I know Mr. Chanticleer has been on the phone with citizens for very long times, answering their questions as well as all of ours. And we just want to thank you for all that you've done, and also for all the citizens that have come out with their emails and to the public hearings and all. We really appreciate it, but thank you.
Thank you. And Rocky and Aaron, if I could let Mr. Moss ask a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question. Kevin, you're right, you are great to work with. And generally speaking, we spend the money in 1 year and issue the bonds in the next. Is that not correct?
So we do reimburse ourselves.
Right. So what's the first year we were issuing the bond referendums relative to flood year? What fiscal year were we doing that in? The first year that we would be issuing debt.
So we would be issuing debt in year 2024, 2025 in terms of when we would be seeking the reimbursement.
The reason why I'm asking that, because when we did the bunding, laid out the program, we said, what was the amount of money we had to collect to count for debt service, to count ultimately when it came online for operation and sustainment and maintenance. And so that was a front-loaded, so we're not just paying debt service, we're paying all of that, and money gets distributed in different trustees' accounts. So when we look at the out year and program the money, obviously that's programmed based on still issuing the debt. That's how the CIP looks. All we're making is, in 1 year, we're saying we're gonna make the payment rather than buying, that the taxes would have generated. It's the same payment. We're just paying it in that year with cash. In the next year, you come and you say, if you had more of a performance, why would we tax? I'm just trying to say is we're not undermining, because we are funding the life cycle requirement to include debt service in the year of this budget. That has to go and pay that debt service in the year which those bonds are issued, which is 2 budget cycles away. Those bonds won't be rated until we get to a position to issue it. So we're just talking about, we can still raise taxes the next year if that's necessary, if we have more revenue. So my point is, because I think the point being made was that one-time funding, looking like one-time funding, because we're still programming the debt, was irresponsible. I just want my peers to know, they may not have remembered, that the $28 million is front-loading the debt service, the cost to operate it when those projects come online, their maintenance and sustainment. So I want people to understand that doing this, what I was proposing, wasn't putting the city's bond in record and was 2 years away before the bonds have to be issued and this quote-unquote sustained funding. Because I was the biggest advocate for the bond referendum. But also, it's a revenue requirement. It's not a financing requirement. But we're obligating the good faith of the city, of all its revenue sources. That's what that GOB bond is. So there's lots of ways of satisfying that. So I don't want people to walk away thinking that the only way of having sustained funding could be cash every year if our economy overperformed. But we're still meeting the funding requirement in that budget year for that necessary. I just want to make sure that people understand that what was being proposed was one-time revenue for a one-time requirement. We get to next year, we might have to raise taxes, but we met the requirement without raising it, and it doesn't impact the city's credit rating.
Okay, thank you, Rocky, then Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kevin. And I think I want to echo what I've heard here tonight about the help that we've received from everybody and all the hard work on this budget. But I want to talk a little bit about this hybrid pay plan system. And we got a number of city employees that have been here all throughout these testimonies and these hearings. And the implementation of this step plan will cover 80% of the city's workforce, and it is the largest change to the overall pay structure within the last 20 years. So I want to make sure that we know that beyond the vote, it's very important that we get the implementation right. And it's my hope that we have a voice at the table from all the stakeholders that can ask the questions and have those questions at the table so that we get it right the first time. Because the biggest overall pay structure in the last 20 years, we need to get it right because it's not only a recruitment and retention thing, it's very important that we get these salaries right. So it's my hope in this budget, and Vice Mayor, you talked about it, that we get it right with HR and we have the patience to make sure that we ask the right questions and field any questions that might be downstream that we can get taken care of. So again, thank you for all the work on this, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dehaney's nodding his head.
Okay, yep, good. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a perfect segue. I just wanted to take the time to thank our city manager. Again, I think we're so very fortunate to have Mr. Dehaney here, to find guys like Kevin Chandelier and many of our DCMs here as well, and to put together, work with us on this budget. I mean, we have some requests out there, and we tell him what we want, and he goes and tries to find it and makes it all work. But then also just the day-to-day just duty of just running our city and maintaining our city, dealing with staff, the workforce, people leaving, retention leaving, attracting as well, while all trying to keep our city open as well. So, Mr. City Manager, again, I thank you for your hard work. I thank you for your commitment. I thank you for your vision as well. And I thank you for being someone, who were able to take on 11 different personalities here. And one time I must say you get upset, get mad. You're quite a quiet guy. You're really a quiet guy at times. And so, again, I think you make it a lot easier to be able to work with around here, especially when we come with requests and ask you to find it or get things done. You always do it with a smile on your face, and you get it done. So I have no doubt in my mind the implementation of our pay plan and step pay plan system coming up will be done accordingly and done in rather a due diligent and fast manner. So thank you, Mr. City Manager, for all that you do for us on this body and for our city.
Linwood.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, since we're talking about compensation, I just want to note that the Process Improvement Committee has been working on that issue. As you recall, at the retreat, we provided information that Monica Chaparro had done research on for us, surveying the employees on what they wanted, and we provided that information at the retreat. We're also looking at ways to intensify our ability to recruit employees now that we have this plan. We hope we go outside the region and not poach from other cities in the region, but actually go out statewide and nationwide and try to fill our ranks of employees. And we think we got testimony from particularly the chief of police and fire chief that the STEP plan would allow us to recruit nationally. And also we're working with HR to look at how we can improve hiring issues there. And we'll be coming back with some of that information for you all very soon. So process improvement is on this, and hearing the comments from the council members, we're in line with what you want to do. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
If I may, since process improvement is looking at all that, how about looking also at these grants that we're giving out and see if we need to abandon the COIG grants and the Arts and Humanities grants and just go back to having them all come to council?
I understand.
Or if we're going to keep those processes. I mean, we're talking about process,
Well,
so.
both you and the vice mayor have given that direction, so we will get on that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, at this point, the vote is, yeah, Sabrina?
Thank you. Since we are talking about process and policies, you know, my comments are pretty much the same as last year. I don't really see equity in this budget. I think the process can be improved. I'm happy to discuss how. But even though, you know, it's true we can't get anything done alone, but I think we have to be a bit more considerate of other communities, other priorities, and I think we can be more collaborative in working together on this budget. I mean, there are communities that have been left out of the budget. C-Tax, I mean, their priorities left out of the budget on a continuous basis. There are other priorities left out of the budget. Year after year after year. Projects just unfunded. Year after year with no strategy to budget them. And then if you look at where the money's going, there's some concerns there too. And so for me, it's difficult. On the one hand, we are putting the staff who've worked so hard, you know, and this is not something we're just finding out. This is something that they've always done. And to make that a priority, I think it is probably one of the most profound things that we have done in this budget. Probably a little too late, but nevertheless, we're doing it. But it's not us, it's the people who came out and advocated to make the change. I saw the beginning, and then when the people came out and advocated, I saw the change and the transition. It's the people, the staff, who deserve the accolades. It's your advocacy that made this budget ensure that you were a priority. But in terms of compensation, I think that we need to address some more issues. There are other issues with staff in terms of their benefits that I'm hearing about, their sick time, other benefits that need to be addressed so that if they're sick, you know, they can take sick time off and not having to take, you know, other time off that, you know, is causing them a problem. If they have COVID, I'm hearing there are issues where they can't fully take time off. And there are other concerns, and so I'd like to work with the city manager on that. It's something that I've been hearing about on a continuous basis, and I would really like to have a plan and a strategy, and that's what the staff has been asking for in public utilities and public waste and human services. And then there are also some other issues with promoting internally. There are quite a few issues. And so, you know, in talking with them on a regular basis, this is only, this compensation in the plan is only the tip of the iceberg, but we need to get down in the trenches and address those lingering, long-standing issues that they've had to really show them that we do value them. These are things that they've been asking for many years. And so with that, you know, that's a huge benefit, and I weigh that. But on the other side, I'm looking at the process is flawed, and I don't see any urgency or desire to change it. That's the problem. We're getting ready to change the electoral system where we're going to have districts. There has to be a way to address district issues, communities that have been left out of the budget for years. It's something that I've brought up to this body before, not with a lot of support, but we're gonna have to look at changing this. It doesn't work. And then, you know, equity. That's important when you're looking at a budget. And we just have a long-standing history of ignoring equity, of ignoring fairness and equality. We can't keep doing that. Times are changing. The electoral system process is changing. We need to change our process in this budget, in the future. And I've been on council for about 4 years now, and I've not seen it budge. It's the same thing every year. Really tired of seeing that.
Thank you. Aaron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for, not to get into, you know, the budget, just for a point of clarification, you know, CTEC, right? CTEC typically asked that the rec center be included in the CIP. And so here in the budget, page 5, I won't read the whole thing, but per a consultant, based on current facility conditions and age modernization needs exists for the following: Great Neck Rec Center, Bayside Rec Center, Princess Anne Rec Center, and CTEC. Included within this report would be a projection of the cost for construction and operational needs, as well as information on what funding gaps might exist. So I just want to make sure CTEC was mentioned, you know, place where I grew up at. It is within this budget, as well as all of those rec centers report that are looked at as well on the projection needs for costs and modernizations. And so I just want to make sure that was included.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't finished, but that's good. But for years, overlooked. My last conversation was that they were not going to be made a priority in the budget. And so it will remain to be seen if that's followed through. Thank you for that update. But I have to say, again, we really need to look at this process. After so many years, you know, seeing the same thing and seeing the same communities and districts neglected, you know, and next year we'll be looking at the same process. So again, we really need to look at ways to change. And so those are my comments.
Okay,
I'm done.
Okay, at this point, it is open for the vote on going for the reconcile proposal as read.
Councilmember Lucci, may I have your verbal vote, please?
I vote aye.
By a vote of, go ahead and close it, 10-1, you have approved the reconciled budget, operating and capital improvement budget.
And if I could just take a minute to thank everybody, at the dais. People, politicians look forward to the budget season with the same relish as a root canal. And that's just the way it is because it could be uncomfortable, but it's a necessary part of what we do. And that being said, we as a council, we as a Commonwealth, we as a nation, to my knowledge, this is the first budget we ever had to do coming out of a 2-year COVID, smack in the middle of, a tough economic time. And we had to address a couple things that were high priorities. And once again, trying to find the balance. Sometimes you gotta tip things that are just gonna tip it one way and another way, and a lot of folks some folks are gonna be happy, and not everybody's gonna be happy, and some people are gonna get angry. But I think what we found in this budget going forward is a foundation going forward that we as a city are going to have a bright future with the broadband coming in, with the, the cables coming over. A lot of companies are going to want to come here now. And I have been telling people, friends don't let their children go to work in Northern Virginia anymore. We're going to find jobs for them right here. So by stabilizing the workforce and doing what we have to do, it was a tough one. It wasn't easy. Budgets are a collaborative process with many people involved. The council members, a great management team, staff, but especially the public who took the time and effort to come out. And to everybody, I say thank you. We are adjourned.